Welcome. I'm Peggy, and I'm so glad you joined me today, and I hope you'll take a few minutes to just sit down and relax and enjoy the guests that I have here. We're going to talk about education, but we're going to talk about from the beginning, if you're a parent of a small child, all the way through, facing the world that we have now and the world that is going to be right around the corner. And we need to be prepared. And we're going to talk about the importance of education. And I do thank you, sir, for coming. Dr. Warren J. Carson is here from the USC Upstate. And I could spend the whole program just talking about that I have here, but he has been also a musician, and he has been a director of a gospel choir. He has received all kinds of awards, and 32 years at the USC Upstate, right?
That's correct.
English teacher.
That's right.
Where do we begin?
Well, you always begin at the beginning. I didn't start out as a teacher. I started out as a student. And I mean, I learned to read and write and do arithmetic, the 3 R's as they always called it, when I was very young. It started in the home, frankly. And then I went to kindergarten, and then first grade, and primary
right
school, all the way through. But the thing I think that served me best through all of those years was getting off to a good start and having a very firm foundation in terms of educational tools to work with.
And children need to be encouraged.
They need to be encouraged. They need certain structure. But at the same time, they need to be allowed to dream and pursue the kinds of interests that they demonstrate early on. I never was really that much of a scientist, but certainly learned to recognize the value of science and math. I was always a reader. I loved language. Yeah, I loved language. I loved words. I loved the images that were presented in various books. And to be honest with you, I learned not only from very basic spellers and those kinds of books that people don't use too much anymore, but I learned to develop a fascination with language from reading the Bible. My great-grandmother was, she instructed me out of that, and I just loved the King James Version because of the wonderful way that the language is used there.
The way the words are presented.
Yeah, and it really doesn't matter what you enjoy reading. I've tutored students, and I always try to find out what they enjoy reading about. And once they find out what they enjoy reading about, they'll learn to enjoy the whole process of reading.
So what I'm gathering from, if I can interpret,
absolutely,
it's very important to start early. And how important is it, if you have little children, to read to them and let them see the holding of a book?
They need to be read to. They need to understand that this book can come alive and it informs their imagination, and that their imaginations inform their abilities a little bit later on. And so it's a constant building and growing that starts at a very young age. There's nothing else that can top that.
So I'm going to say right now, turn off the television set. If you have small children, pick up a book and read to them. And you have a closeness that you develop with children if you read to them.
You do. And I think sometimes in the interest of serving kind of newer ways of education or educating children, we perhaps discount far too much the absolute necessity of their getting off to a good start with the building blocks. That's the best way to start, and they grow into it, they grow with it, and sooner or later they learn to pass it on to others. I got started as a teacher very early on. It was quite a fluke, as a matter of fact. My kindergarten teacher had terrible laryngitis, and one day he, and that was another interesting thing. I had a male uh, uh, in, uh, instructor for the kindergarten. His name was Professor Lewis Thompson. He was a retired history prof, and why he wanted to spend his days with a room full of children, you know, who were 4, 5, and 6 years old, I will never know. But one day he just could not talk, and he said, "All right, you'll have to instruct today," and it just kind of stuck with me for the rest of my life. And so
that was an early beginning.
A very early beginning. I had no idea what I was doing at the time, but you catch the bug. And I don't care what else you thought you wanted to do or what else I thought I wanted to do. I always came back to being a teacher first. And even as I've moved through my own career, sometimes outside of the classroom, being a college administrator, I'm still at heart a teacher.
Oh, that's a gift from God.
Well, I think so,
Yeah,
and probably my greatest role models have been teachers. I've always found it important to learn from others and to take what I could get and work from there.
You start when your children are little,
You do.
and you add, and let them know that learning is important and that an education is important. Now, how important is an education and a higher education, university education, in today's world?
Well, it's of paramount importance. In fact, it's indispensable. That doesn't mean that there aren't other things that you can do without completing a collegiate course of study. But if you want to advance in almost any career, many of the popular careers that are around nowadays didn't even exist when I was growing up. I mean, all of the social media things, all of the technology.
And it's happened so fast.
It really has, and you have to be ready to move with it as an adult. But there's some fascinating areas that students can go into nowadays, or people who aspire to be in this career or that career. But you know, you still need those basic building blocks to form the foundation that you build upon as you move through whatever career it is. But you absolutely need to have a collegiate course of study if you're going to advance into the higher reaches.
And there are always opportunities. I mean, you can go, if you have a job, you can still go to school in the evening and add to your ability.
You can, and a lot of times learning doesn't necessarily have to rest within a classroom. Online learning nowadays is just so popular, and I'm happy for people to pursue it if that's the area that they feel most comfortable with. There's a growing cadre of people who've been almost completely educated online. They've done the online high school programs. They've done the online bachelor's and master's and even doctoral programs. So it's possible for you to reach the highest point of degree acquisition without ever stepping foot in anybody's classroom.
Now, you were an English teacher.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's how you started.
That's how I started. Yeah.
And then you've been an expert about African American studies.
I was and still am. It's still a growing discipline, and I think we're finding that there are many people who are interested in it the world over. The whole advent of cultural studies, with people who are looking at different ways that culture and gender and race and ethnicity and all of those other things sort of inform who we are as individuals and as groups of people, and how we interconnect and how we fuse things together. It really does create a fascinating course of study. And young people, you know, they're not afraid to tackle new things, and I find that refreshing in many instances.
And you had 32 years at
Well, actually, it's
USA
about
Upstate.
33 now. that was written a year ago, I think. So yeah, 33 years. And you know, I've taught all
So
levels.
you've experienced change in
Absolutely.
education, and change in perhaps the way the students come to class, what their abilities are, and what their expectations are. In 32 years, that's changed.
That's a generation plus some, and I've taught all levels. I've taught freshmen in college. I've taught seniors in college. I've taught graduate students. I've taught adult education, adult basic education in my early years, people who were coming back to complete their high school diplomas.
But it's never too late.
It's never too late.
That's the thing. It's never too late to learn.
Yeah. And lifelong learning is something that many institutions tout quite highly and quite regularly. It's something that that we need to probably grasp more than we do.
Well, many universities and places of higher education, they're having, you'll see more and more senior citizens. They have classes in the evening,
right.
and it's an outlet. They meet somebody who's interested in the same things they are, and even though they may not be working for a degree, the joy of learning is there. You see it.
Absolutely, and in South Carolina, at least, senior citizens, retirees can take university courses free of charge if there's a seat available for them in the classroom. They can't just take up a seat that somebody's paying for, but if you've got room for 40 and you only have 39 people enrolled, then a senior citizen can come in, or 2 or 3 if there's space for them. And I've had wonderful interactions with some seniors who've come to my classes. And again, learning takes place in any variety of venues. You sometimes take the course to a senior center, or take the course to a church congregation, or take it to a community center. There are any number of ways that learning can continue to happen, and I think that's one of the remarkable things about the culture and the times that we live in.
We're going to go to a break, but before we do, could you just sum up and give some information, some from your vast experience, some information for parents out there? If we start the school year, and maybe they have a first grader, or maybe they have somebody who's going into high school. What are some of the things that you might tell parents that they can help their youngster?
Well, I think they have to provide some structure and a great deal of support for the student at whatever level the student happens to be at. It's particularly crucial in the early grades that students get off to a good start, that they feel valued, but that they also begin to value the educational process and what it leads to. Students who are going from, say, middle school into high school need a different kind of support and structure. But they need to follow their students, and they need to be tuned into what they're doing, and they need to be able to recognize certain interests that students begin to exhibit. And it's also a way to kind of recognize any issues that they may be confronting as well. All education, all learning doesn't necessarily come out of a book, doesn't necessarily come out of school. There's a whole social element to it and a whole cultural element there. So the parental involvement is absolutely crucial, as is a whole village.
You said it all right there. If you are a parent or you have a young person, you're a caregiver, be supportive of that young person. If they're first graders or if they're seniors, whatever, they need to know that you care and that you're interested in what they are pursuing, and be there, the backbone.
Absolutely.
We're going to go to a quick break, and we'll be right back.